Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this important event. My name is Debbie Ario. I'm the CEO of Africa Safeguarding Children, but I'm also the chair of the UK BME Anti-Slavery Network. I really welcome you to this event, and it's a very important event. It's a very crucial event. It's an event that really speaks to the key issue in our sector in relation to the abuse, exploitation, even slavery, if I can use that term, of migrant workers, especially female workers in the health and social care sector. This is a very important issue because in the past, as a network at BASNET, and I'll give a brief introduction about BASNET now. As a network, we've always dealt with issues that are happening outside government. So when I say outside government, these are issues that are happening in the community out there. The perpetrators are, people in the community. The reasons are outside. But this time around, we have a special issue, which, in my viewpoint, has been caused solely by government policy. And this is how these sponsorship visas that were put in place, I think around 2021, in the aftermath of Brexit, how they've been specially designed, in my viewpoint, to encourage the exploitation and slavery of, migrant workers. So to kickstart the event, firstly, I want to say thank you to one of our friends at Africa, Mark Shepherd, who is here this morning. And Mark, I'm going to be calling on you to say a few words in the course of the event. I want to say thank you for this video that you've provided for this event for us to, kind of like just get an overview of what we're talking about. So Africa staff, if you're ready with the video, can you please, let's screen it now very shortly. Thank you.
I think that's one of the best time in my life. It was like a dream come true.
And they never told you anything about sort of working conditions, law, anything regards to your rights as a worker here, anything like that?
Honestly, no.
So you had no information?
I was
about
totally
your rights.
blank. I was totally blank.
The care company specifically where you were outside of London, what was that like? What was the environment and conditions like when you was working there?
Honestly, I was too disappointed. It's not what I expected. There were no clients. There was no work.
They give you any training? What did they do to?
There was no training.
None whatsoever.
There was no training because the client expect much from us carers. It reached a point whereby they could ask, "But have you done this job before?" Because they felt we didn't have the skills and the ability to do the care.
Which is true. You didn't have the training, you didn't have the skills, so you didn't shadow anyone to teach you how to do anything. They literally took you fresh.
Yeah.
And just threw you into a job which you had no skills for.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your situation here.
Yeah.
What's a typical day here?
Here it's so busy. So I start my work at 7 and end at 9 or sometimes even 10. So that means like I'm in the field all day.
So we're talking about 7 a.m. in the morning,
yeah,
until 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And how many days are we talking here?
We're talking 6 days.
6 days.
Yeah.
So with regards to your days off, can you choose your day off?
No.
And is there any particular reason why you can't choose your day off?
There's no reason. They just choose it for you. It's up to the employer. They tell you on this day you'll be off and you have no say.
And how do you feel about that?
Bad. No freedom of speech.
How did it work out for you then with regards to finances?
When it comes to the finances, honestly, it's horrible, because when it comes to the costs, certificate of sponsorship, we are charged for that. 8,000, 5,000, 10,000, others will pay 15,000. So everyone pays something to work.
So the employers basically have put you into debt bondage, basically.
Yes.
So how does it paying them back work? So do they take the money directly, or do they pay you and then you have to pay them? How does the paying back of the
So they pay you
finances?
They pay you and you pay them. You take the money to them.
So do they have a set amount that you need to pay every single month?
It depends on what you've agreed on.
Right. So they monitor your shifts to see how much work you get, and then they calculate how much you pay back. Is that how it works?
No, it depends on the agreement you made on the first date.
Right.
Regardless, if let me give you an example. If you agree to give your employer maybe 500 per month, that's what you'll pay, regardless of the money you'll get by the end of the month.
From the other carers that you've spoken to, what kind of work would they do in order to survive? Because the cash in hand jobs are not always easy to find.
Yeah.
So what else would they be willing to do to earn that kind of money just to pay back the debt bondage?
Yeah, so sorry to say this, but for the girls,
yeah,
they don't do it willingly, or you're forced to do prostitution.
Okay.
So you do the online dating, or you go to a club, get these rich guys, or you go to the casinos, get these rich guys. They give you something, and that's how you survive.
Do they give them sex?
Yeah, that's why I said it's prostitution.
Yeah. So sex in return for money, which then they can use to pay back the debt bondage.
They pay back their date,
and help obviously survive.
Yeah.
To live as well.
Yeah, survive.
What kind of support did you receive from the employer? So when you've come here, did your employer actually explain your legal rights, your contract, things like that? Did they give you any sort of information with regards to the way you work here in the UK with regards to the law? Did they give you any?
We're just given a work contract.
Okay.
And we just signed the trainings.
Did you understand what was in that contract?
Not really.
And did they explain to you what was in that contract?
Not really.
How did the debt bondage come about? How did it work?
So this is how it works. Immediately they get for you like an employer. If someone, let's assume you're my employer, if you're going to give me the job, yeah, they will tell you, okay, I'm going to give you the job, but I'm going to give you a certificate of sponsorship. And for that certificate of sponsorship, you will give me this amount of money. So you make the agreement before anything else, before signing the contract. So it's like they prioritize that.
So they've already put in their minds that they're going to get you into debt before you actually start your role. Because if you wanted to leave, for instance, what would happen if you wanted to go to another care company?
I think they work hand in hand. They know what they're doing. They know 100%. Because when I leave this care company that I'm in, when I go to the next, I'm going to face the same thing. So there is no way a worker is going to leave the company, because they know they'll face the same thing in the next.
So give me an example. So for instance, if you or one of your colleagues wanted to leave, give us a rough guide price of how much that would cost them.
It's between 5,000 to 10,000.
Just to leave?
Yes.
And they expect you to pay that back with the wages that you earn from the work that they give you?
If you're not able to pay the whole amount at once, you make an agreement every month to give some amount of money.
So what happens if you can't pay?
Then you're not given the certificate of sponsorship. Or if you're not able to pay, they revoke your visa, they cut it off, and you look for elsewhere.
So do they say anything to you about money, like paying on time, or if you've not been able to pay, what kind of language would they use with you?
Of course, if you're not, they then threaten. It's a must. If you agree to pay a certain amount at the end of the month, you have no option. You have to pay it.
Debbie, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I just realized. So that was quite distressing to watch, to be honest with you. And that really is symptomatic of the problem we have on our hands in relation to how people are being abused and exploited, put in their bondage just because they've come to the UK to work. So thank you once again, everybody, for joining this important meeting. This event is titled Exploitation of Migrant Black Women in the UK Health and Social Care Sector, a New Slavery. It aims to unravel the intricate layers of exploitation and modern slavery lurking beneath the surface of the health and social care industry. Through our panel discussions and interactive sessions today, we will explore the root causes. We'll look at the systematic implications and potential solutions to this multifaceted issue. As central to the discussion this morning is the acknowledgement that there's an acknowledgement of the intersecting vulnerabilities faced by migrant Black women, shaped by socioeconomic disparities, cultural barriers, and institutionalized discrimination, and the inadequacies, actually, of the existing policy frameworks in safeguarding their rights. So we saw that just now from the video we watched. By shedding light on these realities, this event seeks to challenge prevailing narratives and amplify the voices of those directly affected. So I just want to talk briefly about the format of today's event. I will start by inviting each panelist. And we do have 4 panelists. I'm going to introduce them shortly. I'll start by inviting them to give a brief 5-minute introductory statement. And then we'll follow up with a series of Q&A. And then from myself and from you, the audience. And then as a panel, we will explore some key recommendations to help tackle this growing problem. And then to conclude, I will ask each panelist to give a 2-minute closing statement. So that really is what we're going to do today. I will really please ask everybody to please keep yourselves muted, and there'll be plenty of opportunities, to make a point or make a comment, ask any questions. I'll give plenty of opportunities for that to happen. So please do not interject. We want the event to be free flowing, so there are no toing and froing here. So in terms of the outcomes we're looking for, we hope that the following outcomes will be achieved as a result of today's event. So we're looking at increased awareness of this issue. It is important in all our work, even at home, to be able to understand this issue, because you might think, oh, this is something that just happens in the modern slavery sector. No, actually, that's not the case. And I hope, for example, that maybe Mark might talk about how he came to know about this issue to the point of producing the video we just saw. We want to be able to identify some of the key challenges involved for the various people who have been affected by this. Let's explore some of the policy issues and, of course, really help to amplify the voices of the migrant workers who are not able to come out and speak openly about this issue. And there are many of them. So let me introduce to you our panelists. First of all, I have Emiliano Melino, a great friend of BASNET, journalist, community organizer from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. Emiliano is a senior reporter and he specializes on the intersection of labor exploitation and immigration law. He has worked on investigations into the UK's seasonal worker visa and health and social care visas. So we're very pleased to have you, Emiliano. And then we have our good friend Jamila Donka-Bosu, a solicitor at ATLEO, the Anti-Trafficking Legal Advisory Legal Unit. Jamila is a founding member of ATLEO and she's a solicitor. She is an experienced employment lawyer. Her work has she has worked extensively with clients who have been discriminated against in the workplace or who have suffered harassment or bullying at work. She's an expert negotiator, and she's experienced in obtaining substantial financial settlements for her clients in employment tribunals and through the entire appeals process. And then we have Rumbai Buzwa Bayaga. Rumbai is a solicitor in the UK with 25 years experience, passionate about migrants living in the UK. She's the founder and visionary behind Tulia Community Interest Company, which is an organization providing legal advice, support, and other services for migrants. And she helps employers and sponsor license holders across the UK with compliance issues. And then we have our very own Naima Ahmed. She's our network development manager at BASNET. Naima oversees BASNET's network development and engagement with our members. She is deeply committed to the principles of race equality, diversity, and inclusion. She's passionate about contributing to initiatives that address the intersecting challenges of modern slavery and human trafficking within diverse communities. So those are our 4 panelists, and I'm going to start off with you, Emiliano, by inviting you to please give your 5-minute opening statement. Thank you, Emiliano.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you for inviting me to speak on this very important topic alongside really highly esteemed speakers. In fact, some of the people in the panel are people that we spoke to as part of this investigation and other investigations we've done. So I'm just going to very quickly introduce who I am, and then I'm going to talk a bit about the work we've been doing on the health and care visa. So I work for the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. It is the largest nonprofit investigative newsroom in the UK. One of the good things about working at the Bureau is that we can spend months looking into a topic in depth. Because we're a nonprofit, it gives us a lot of freedom to not worry about having to churn something out every day, but we can really go in depth in a lot of topics. I, like Debbie said, I specialize on issues of immigration and employment, and where those two things come together. So, for example, the ways in which the British immigration system makes people more vulnerable to exploitation. And so, as part of a team, including 2 other reporters, Hajar Mehta and Vicky Gale, we started looking into the health and care visa last summer. There was already some stories out there about the sense of the exploitation, the recruitment fees, and issues like that were happening to workers that were coming on this visa. But what's become clear to us over the last few months of doing this investigation, and which we published on Monday, is really the sheer scale of this and the sheer government complicity in this exploitation. I mean, I'm convinced that this is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, scandals taking place in the UK right now in terms of the sheer amount of damage it's doing to just a great number of lives, potentially thousands of people being affected here by exploitation and conditions, potentially conditions akin to modern slavery. So we spoke to many workers who came to the UK on the health and care visa. And we also teamed up with Citizens Advice Bureau, which is one of the, a frontline organization, very well known in the UK, that provides help and frontline advice to people in difficult situations. Altogether, between Citizens Advice and us, we recovered testimony from more than 170 workers who had come to the UK on the health and care visa. And the picture these workers painted was truly horrific. And they face a whole number of issues, similar to the issues that were mentioned earlier on in that video by Jane, that care worker who gave testimony. So we saw things, for example, very endemic levels of wage theft, of employers not paying workers the full salaries that they're owed, either because they didn't pay the workers all the hours they worked, or they didn't pay the workers for training time, or for holidays, or for sick pay, or because they would bring workers over on the visa, they would promise them 39, 40-hour per week contracts and then not give them any hours, or give them a fraction of those hours. And so people arrive expecting to work normal job, earn normally, and then they find out that there is no work and there is no money. I mean, we spoke to some people that weren't paid anything at all by their employers. And this is combined with the other side of the coin, which is a lot of people telling us that they were overworked. So for example, that they would work 20 hours a day without a break, or one worker who told Citizens Advice that they'd worked for nearly 4 months without a day off. In other instances, people were having to do jobs that weren't their jobs. So one of the workers we spoke to, Neville, who came on a health and care visa, but then was made to do other jobs, like being a cleaner or being a porter, something which wasn't in the visa arrangement and wasn't in the contract. And then all of this is exacerbated by another major issue, which is illegal recruitment fees. Like Jane mentioned, a lot of workers are asked to pay a fee to either a recruiter or their employer before they're given a certificate of sponsorship, that is a document you need to get a visa, or before they're given a contract. So I know Jane in that video mentioned that people were paying as much as £10,000. We know of people paying as much as £30,000, 30,000 pounds to secure a visa and a job in the UK. And in many instances, these people arrive and they find out that there is no job. So after they've sold off family land, they've gotten into debt, hoping that making this investment will result in a better life, they come here and they find out there's nothing for them, leaving them in absolute destitution. And this plays into another aspect of British immigration law, which is this condition, which is attached to many visas, which is no recourse to public funds, which means that these people, if they are not being paid properly by their employer, or if they're fired from their job, they cannot access benefits. They cannot access public housing. Their immigration conditions do not allow them to. So they're left in absolute destitution. And so, for example, Citizens Advice, which provides frontline advice, a lot of their advisors are completely distraught because there's really very little they can offer these workers. They say at best what they can offer these workers is some advice on debts and food bank vouchers. I'm going to wrap up very quickly. I think the final thing to say is, why is all of this happening, right? And one of the things we found is that one of the big reasons why this is happening is because workers, the visa conditions themselves punish workers for whistleblowing. So what do we find? We find that some workers speak out and are then fired by their employer, and this puts their visa at risk because their visa depends on their employer. Or in other cases, workers report their employer to the Home Office, and the Home Office goes and revokes the company's sponsor license, which means that all the visas that company sponsors are potentially at risk. Potentially all those visas are revoked. So the system is set up in a way that if you whistleblow, there's a significant risk, an important risk, that you will lose your visa. And employers know this, and employers threaten workers with this. So if workers are considering speaking out, the employer we found employers often threaten the workers and tell them, well, if you speak out, you're going to lose your visa. And this is the threat that's constantly looming over workers. And this is really a result of the way the government has designed this visa. I'm going to finish off there and pass on to the next speaker. I just want to say also that the patterns we see here with this visa are very similar to the patterns we saw with the seasonal worker visa, which is the visa for agricultural workers. The sorts of issues that emerged, the excessive power given to visa sponsors, the lack of labor enforcement. These are all things that you also find with this other visa the government has created. And so you see that this is a broader problem of how the the British government handles immigration policy and handles employment policy. Thank
you. Excellent. Thank you, Emiliano. I'm going to come to you now, Jamila.
Yeah.
If you can please give us your opening statement for 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Right. I'll try and keep it to 5 minutes. So basically, I echo everything that Emiliano and Debbie have said. And I would go again, I would absolutely agree that what we are seeing here is the government being complicit and perpetuating the exploitation of workers. So a colleague of mine, Aki, at Migrants at Work, often describes this as state-sponsored slavery, and he's absolutely right. The reality is the government have been well aware that wherever you have tied visas, wherever workers are tied to a specific employer, that there is a risk of exploitation. So as Emiliano has said, we've seen this with the seasonal worker visa. We've even seen this with overseas domestic worker visas. So the government are fully aware that there is a risk of workers who are tied to their visa being exploited, that there is a power imbalance and a risk that they will suffer various abuses and breaches. So in my work at ATLU, I've seen lots of workers describing the situations that we saw in the video. Workers who've paid huge sums of unlawful recruitment fees to come to the UK. Now, the government fail in the fact that they are not clear as to what is a lawful fee. They have a very sort of vague reference to administration fees, but they haven't set out categorically what fees are lawful and what fees are unlawful, and therefore making that clear to a potential worker. They've not taken steps to ensure that any workers coming to the UK are fully aware of what their legal rights are. So again, we saw this with the overseas domestic worker visa and a government review suggesting that those workers needed to be informed about their legal rights in the UK. That was a relatively small cohort of workers where we saw those kinds of abuses that we described earlier taking place. Despite that knowledge, the government have decided to replicate the situation. So at the start of 2023, there were up to 106,000 healthcare visas being issued. So those are workers being given visas to work in the UK with little scrutiny over those employers. There's a very good chance, as we've discovered, that there's a 1 in 20 chance of a care home being audited. So these workers are stuck in a really, really precarious situation. Now, as I say, I see workers at ATLU all the time who are in this really difficult situation. I've recently taken instructions from a worker who had paid £25,000 for a certificate of sponsorship in order to take up employment in the UK, and has then been required to work 7 days a week with no time off, and is regularly receiving cuts to her salary for no apparent reason. She's being sanctioned for actually trying to give care to the clients that she's looking after. She came to me because she wanted to blow the whistle. But as Emiliano has said, the risk in her doing that is simply that the care home is closed down, but no steps are taken to support or assist those workers. Now, in her case, we are making an argument that she has suffered financial fraud. And essentially, she's been placed in debt bondage. She's paid huge sums of money to be able to come to the UK. And she is beholden to this employer who threatens to dismiss her or arrange to have her visa cancelled. Now, in reality, an employer can't cancel the visa. All they can do is tell the Home Office that the worker no longer works for them. But then that places the worker under a huge amount of pressure because they have 60 days to find a new employment. There's all the difficulties in being able to meet the right to rent checks and all those other kind of immigration barriers that have been put in place. So workers are in an extremely precarious position because of the visa and the way in which that visa works. Now, for my particular client, the only way that we can really give her any sort of courage to be able to pursue a claim against her employers is by supporting her to be recognised as a victim of trafficking. But that is no easy prospect because the whole notion of trafficking and the phenomena and the way in which it's operating now hasn't necessarily kept up with all of the definitions that we're used to dealing with. What we're actually now seeing is what we would describe as financial fraud. Yet a lot of the guidance around trafficking phenomena and what amounts to debt bondage, etc., is actually quite quiet on financial fraud. So on the face of it, there are lots of workers who should be recognised as having been trafficked to the UK and trafficked into care work, who have suffered financial fraud because they've been deceived as to the terms of the employment they'll be taking. They've been required to pay sums of money, and once here, either not being paid properly, are being overworked, and put in a situation where they can't believe that where they're not able to leave because the employer is saying that they need to pay them, or there are real barriers in the way of them getting new employment. All of those are indicators that someone has suffered financial fraud. And if the government, if the competent authority recognise that, that individual can be recognised as a victim of trafficking, which at least give them some respite, which would at least give them a minimal amount of financial support and some accommodation while action is taken. Because the reality is, health and care workers are workers with employment rights in the UK. So not being paid your salary is an unlawful deduction of wages and a complaint that could be brought in the employment tribunal. Being harassed to pay sums of money or to work at extremely long and onerous hours, those are all breaches of workers' rights. But the reality is very few workers are in a position to actually really enforce those rights because of the poor visa regime that we have, because of the limited access to legal advice and assistance. So I think I've perhaps gone over my 5 minutes there, but the reality is that the government really needs to look at the way in which they're operating this scheme. There needs to be real changes to the manner in which this regime has been put together. The government can't continue to just keep, piling injury upon injury and filling all of our skill shortages with workers who are on tied visas who are simply being exploited. I mean, that's how we create a race to the bottom. Either workers are workers with rights and we support all of those workers, or they're not. We can't have this situation of two-tier employment and essentially the government allowing vacancies to be filled with slaves. And let's face it, that's what it is. The government are basically saying we cannot fill these skills gaps, so let's bring in individuals we can exploit. Let's bring in slaves. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Jamila. It's very powerful contributions from both of you and Emiliano. And essentially just highlighting this is a problem of the government's very own making. This is something that the government itself has put in place. It started with the Overseas Domestic Workers Visa, the Seasonal Workers Visa, now the Health and Social Care Visa. And so essentially, a lot of people are being deliberately asked to come to the UK to work, knowing full well that they're going to end up being enslaved. That really is a summary, of what the two of you have said. So I'm just going to kind of like open this up to the audience. Does anybody at this point have any questions or any comments they would like to make? If so, can you please raise your hand? And I hope I can see you. Or if my colleagues can look out for me, because this is a bit, I'm not really able to see anyone. Does anybody have any comments at this stage? Please virtually raise your hand. Anyone? Any comments?
See, hands up. See.
Okay. Just can you, you have the floor, please.
Yes, my name's Sue Brock-Smith and I set up a charity in Oxford to support survivors of modern slavery, and we're currently supporting mainly migrant care workers. Most of them don't have enough evidence to be referred into the NRM. So we're providing an extra layer of support that it's not statutory support, we're all volunteers. But the question I'd like to ask is, does anybody have any ideas how we can help these people get their money back?
Excellent, good question. Let me take another question, then you can try and respond to both at the same time. Can I take a question from Gary, please? Gary Craig?
Yeah. About 6 years ago, I was asked to go and give a talk to a group of social workers about the possibilities of modern slavery being present in the social care system. And at the end of the talk, I invited them to send me confidential examples of situations that they'd run across. And I got quite a few responses back, slightly anecdotal, but on the whole pointing to the fact that there was probably a very serious problem in the social care system as a whole, and that whilst a lot of focus had been on the exploitation of older people in the press, there had been no discussion at all about the position of care workers themselves. So I then contacted the Gangmasters Licensing Authority, and they said care is way down our list of priorities. Well, I noticed last year, after I've been nagging them year on year at their conferences, last year they finally said that social care has now become a serious issue for them, and it was one of their priorities. So question one is, should we not, and perhaps BASNET could take this up, should we not be approaching the Gangmasters Licensing Authority, because they claim to be evidence-led, and there's clearly a lot of evidence that the present speakers and probably some who follow will give. The second issue is the position of the Care Quality Commission. I couldn't get them to take this issue at all seriously. And whilst they may not have the powers to do anything about wages and the use of employment tribunals, they could certainly do something about the terms and conditions under which people are employed. But as I understand it, they're at the moment, they're not prepared to do anything at all. I may be wrong, I may be slightly out of date, so I'd advise some caution in the wording of an approach to them. But I think both the Gangmasters Licensing Authority and the Care Quality Commission should be approached to ask for their views and to ask what they're doing about it. Thanks, that's me.
Thank you, Gary. We will certainly do that. Actually, we did send a joint letter signed by all of our members at BASNET to the Home Office about over a month ago now. We're still waiting for a reply. So yes, we will contact these two agencies, but you know, hopefully we'll get a response from them, but certainly we will take it forward. Thanks, Gary. Let me take another question from Glenda, and actually I'll take yours, Hannah, and then I'll pass it on to the panelists. So Glenda, you first.
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm in so much pain. Yeah, I'm really emotional. I came here in October last year as a care worker, and on the 1st of March, they sent an email to me, said I must come to the office for a probationary review, and they said I've been dismissed. They're going to revoke my COS, and the reasons were that there are clients of which I've never been to their homes. They said those clients said they don't want to see me at their homes because I don't know what I'm doing, and they said there are carers who said they are not okay working with me on double ups. I had conflict with them. I said, if I had conflicts with them, why didn't you call me and them so that we have a conflict resolution between us? Then said they got no space for me, and they just dismissed me just like that. They said the review is of the contract is over. So since the first, yesterday I got 20 hours at a certain company. I asked them for the reference. They called me today where I got the 20 hours and said, no, we fired her. She doesn't know what she's doing. We have revoked her sponsorship. So I don't know how to go about it because there was no hearing or anything. I wasn't even given any time to appeal, because I've got evidence on my rotas that the client statement, I've never been to them. And even the other colleagues, I said, you must call them so that we see they say their words, and I say, then they just say no.
Glenda, I tell you what, let me take your details.
Yes.
And then this afternoon I'll call you, because actually there's a lot that probably you need advice on. Yeah, so I'll give you some advice separately.
Excellent. That's Jamila, by the way, Glenda. So Glenda, Jamila will be in touch to give you some advice on that. Okay. And yeah, thanks. Hannah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for everyone's contributions. And Glenda, so sorry to hear that. And thanks to Jamila for providing support. My name's Hannah Newcomb from Stronger Together. We're a not-for-profit that works with businesses on responsible recruitment and mitigating labour exploitation. We had an event last week and Gary, Phil Kane from the GLEA was there and the Care Quality Commission were there as well. So I'm happy to facilitate introductions to them if that's helpful. And that was an event focused on exploitation of migrant care workers. My question for Emiliano and Jamila was, from your experience and the cases that you're seeing, is predominantly the risk with overseas recruitment agencies that are charging these extremely inflated and excessive fees, or is it predominantly with care providers in the UK that are charging workers those fees, or is it a combination of both?
Thank you. Good question. Right. So let me just remind you, we have two questions now that you need to respond to. So Seth asked the question, what can we do to support the people coming to us? And Hannah is asking the question, who is exploiting who? Are we talking about overseas, agents, or are we talking about the UK-based ones? So can I come to you first, Emiliano?
Sorry, to address Hannah's question or the earlier questions as well?
Both, either or both questions.
Okay, yeah. So I'll start with Hannah's question. Yeah, I mean, it's a mixture of both. Often what you have is nothing as formal as a recruitment agent. It's sort of an informal agent that in some way is connected to the company and is in the country where the person is being recruited. And I think one of the challenges, I think someone earlier on mentioned how difficult it was to get evidence. I think one of the challenges that often the payments are done abroad, often the payments are done in cash, and often, well, one thing we've heard people are being told is when they get on the plane, they're told, delete all your WhatsApps because that's going to cause you trouble at immigration. So at that point, in the last minute, people stressed getting on the plane, they delete the message. And so they in turn delete the evidence they have that they were asked to pay this money. And then often people are being asked to pay money once they're here in the UK. So people that will be asked to pay money to renew their COS by their employer, again, they'll be asking for the money in cash, or that they'll be asked to pay admin fees after the fact. So that's in terms of the recruitment fees and so on. In terms of the question about the GLEA, yeah, in theory, the GLEA is the body, the government authority that should be dealing with issues of modern slavery, or one of the authorities that should be dealing with issues of modern slavery. The problem you have is that the GLEA and most labor enforcement in the UK is chronically under-resourced. So I can't remember exactly the numbers right now, but I think for the last year, the funding the Home Office gave the GLEA was somewhere above £6 million, which for a government department from an enforcement agency, it's peanuts. £6 million is peanuts. The Home Office spends more money on pens and paper and printing than it does on the Gangmaster and Labor Abuse Authority, just to give you a sense where their priorities lie here. And I think the other problem is just in general, there's a lack of resource for labor enforcement in the UK. So for example, if you think about there's a body called the International Labour Organization, which is the international body, the UN body, which is in charge of creating the labor standards across the world. They have a recommendation that there should be one labor inspector for every 10,000 workers. The UK has 0.29, I think. So a quarter of the number of labor inspectors that the country should have. So, there's really an asymmetrical situation at play here. There aren't the resources, the bodies, and they will themselves will admit they do not have the resources to tackle all these problems. And then in terms of CQC, well, now the government said, you can only get a sponsor license if you're CQC registered. I mean, the problem here is that the CQC is not a labor enforcement body, so they don't really have the expertise to deal with labor enforcement issues. So yeah, and then was there another question? No, I think that was all of them.
Yeah, Emiliano, I think you've hit the nail on the head, because the reality is they haven't got the staff to do the inspection they need. So I got given a figure of one compliance officer for every 1,600 employers licensed to sponsor workers. So, and I think I'd also seen something that said that there's a 1 in 20 chance of anybody actually coming and inspecting your care home. So you've got there's a lot you can get away with before anybody is going to find out what you're up to. Now, in terms of what workers can actually do, this is the thing that I find really frustrating, because actually all of these workers have employment rights. There is no, the Employment Rights Act is really clear. You cannot make a deduction to somebody's wages unless there's an express agreement about it. So you can deduct tax and national insurance. Anything else, you need an express agreement. The law also says that the employer has to produce all of the records showing what they've paid you and keep records of your, annual leave and all of those kinds of things. And it's actually a criminal offence not to comply with those, those minimum wage requirements. So as I said, the real difficulty is this thing of that, employers have power in that they will say something like, I'm going to cancel your visa. Now, in reality, they can't cancel the visa. They'll tell the Home Office that you don't work for them. The Home Office will at some point get round to sending you a letter saying your visa will be curtailed in 60 days unless you make a new application. So what happens is then workers are scrabbling around trying to find new employment. And actually what the government should be doing is helping in those circumstances. So if they've taken away their license from a rogue employer, they should be doing something to support those workers instead of just granting more licenses to a next organisation. What about all those workers that have been taken out of that situation? If they find new employment and you've been taken from a rogue employer, why not waive any certificate of sponsorship fees and things like that? So there's lots. The failing is in the fact that people can't get the legal advice that they need. And then people are at risk when they're trying to get that legal advice. So again, as I say, at ATLU, what I try and do is get them recognised as a victim of trafficking. So at least if they don't get that employment within 60 days, they've got the safety net of being a victim of trafficking. There is actually a case called Kwakwa, which was somebody who hadn't been recognised as a victim of trafficking, but was bringing a claim in the courts and basically said, I need a visa, I need a right to remain in the UK, because that's the only way I'm going to really be able to pursue my compensation case. So again, that's something else that that I want to try and test. But the reality is, it's all, I say to workers all the time, there are steps that we can put in place and things that we can do to try and protect you and get this claim off the ground. But it's still such a precarious position to be in. So, I regularly see lots and lots of workers, but the numbers who are actually in a position to be able to pursue some kind of complaints are really, really small. So I've got a couple of cases which I'm running in the Employment Tribunal, but actually, as we've all said, the problem is in the way in which the government have decided to put in place this regime. The government has a duty to ensure that people aren't put into slavery or servitude. There's definitely been a lot more discussion about what's happening to workers, and I think particularly after Emiliano's article. I saw an article this morning which said that the government response has just been to slow down renewing people's visas. And again, that's just, exacerbating the position that people are in. So my strong feeling is that actually in the way in which this scheme has been designed, the government are in breach of their Article 4 obligation. So Article 4 of the European Convention on Human Rights says that people should not be held in slavery or servitude. So that has an operational requirement. So the government have to look at these systems and ensure that people aren't being held in slavery and servitude. But the overwhelming evidence that we're seeing is that this certificate of sponsorship and the way in which they've allowed, it's a business. You can set up a business and basically charge people for the certificate of sponsorship, and there's no job. Nobody is actually saying, where are your accounts? Where are the number of users that you've got signed up with this care home to demonstrate that you actually need to bring all these workers in? My colleague and I came across some cases recently of workers who'd come in to be care workers. There was no job for them. They were all in debt, having paid huge recruitment fees. They're now working for £3 an hour in the garment industry in Leicester. So again, it's almost as if the government are willfully turning their eye to these things because there are employment sectors which they can't fill anymore post-Brexit, and they know that, you know, British nationals who don't have that visa that they can, you know, who can't be, you know, exploited because of the need to maintain this visa, won't take those jobs. So this is why we then go full circle back to the idea of this being state-sponsored slavery. So one of the things me and my colleagues are working on is some kind of challenge, because it seems to us the government are in breach of our Article 4 obligation. So I am in the process of, you know, putting the, well, I've let the cat out of the bag now, I've told everyone about it, but there is a claim. So I think that's what needs to happen, actually. There needs to be this sort of two-pronged approach. You know, there needs to be a policy change, but I'm hoping that some kind of litigation will really force the government's hand, because the reality is they absolutely know what's going on about. You know, they know that this is happening. There is no excuse for it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jamila. Very, you know, very powerful, useful contribution there. We look forward to the challenge. If there's anything we can do to help, we're very happy to do that. We did, we wrote a collective letter, BASNET members, 40 of us wrote to the Home Secretary over a month ago about this issue. And so far we haven't had any response. So the government is very much aware. And our view is that the government doesn't really care. So something has to give, and possibly the challenge that you have in mind might be it. So thank you for that. I really forgot to call on Joy and Yemisi, but because of time, let me take the next two panelists, and then we have plenty of time to discuss further. I can also see that there's some contributions in the chat box. I'll go through them and then I'll read them out at the next section. So let me call on Rumbi to give our intervention for 5 minutes. Rumbi, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debbie, and thank you, Emiliano and Jamilia. I am Rumbi from an organization called Tulia. We're based in Coventry, in the West Midlands, and we've experienced exactly the same issues that everyone has been speaking about, and we've seen a marked increase in our requests for our services from carers. And I just, instead of talking about perhaps the issues which are common issues which are affecting everyone, which is that workers are coming into the UK, they've been sold COSs, they don't have work, and they're finding themselves destitute or on the clock to the 60 days. I want to talk about something that we've been doing as an intervention, and we've partnered with our local council, which is Coventry City Council and Warwickshire Council. So we started a pilot drop-in. We just wanted to see, because we usually give our advice online and virtually, but we started a physical drop-in at a local church, and the numbers were absolutely overwhelming, of people traveling from right across the UK, from Belfast, from Kent, from London, from Manchester, Leeds, coming to a legal drop-in in Coventry because of the shortage of advice services and places where they can get help. And most of the people that came in over the 4 weeks that we've held this pilot, we've had 300 people, just over 300, come in to access our service. And we are giving advice to carers on how to protect their immigration status. As Jamila has said, and Emiliano and Debbie, there is a two-prong approach. There's the issue of their immigration status, and there's an issue of their employment rights. Some of the workers have challenged the labor abuse or the lack of work, and this has led to their employers having their license revoked because the CQC steps in, Home Office steps in, and the Home Office has revoked licenses and have issued the 60-day letters. And so the employees are facing, their visa is about to run out, which will affect their right to work, right to rent, and their right to remain in the UK. and they cannot then pursue any claims against the employers. So we've been helping people to make applications. There is a rule called Rule 3C, which allows them to make, if you make an in-time valid application, you can have a limited leave of time when you're waiting for the decision, where if they get employment, they can switch to a new employer, or they can then ask for leave to remain in order to pursue their rights, which is something that Jamila has spoken about. And I think one of the key things for us is to try and protect their right to remain, because becoming an illegal immigrant in the UK will have a whole set, it will complicate an already complicated situation. So our council has come in to try and help to get them into employment. And that's that's one of the main things that people want to do, is to work for reputable organizations. And so we've been working together with adult social care, the migration team, and us on the advice side to try and help the workers. And that model is new. We don't yet have figures of how many people we've got into employment, but we have been able to get people into employment and to regularize their immigration status. But the other thing that we're seeing that's affecting the workers is that the Home Office is taking a knee-jerk approach. They understand what's happened, and they've lurched from one extreme to another. So even established, high-quality, regulated home care providers are not able to get certificates of sponsorship or even to renew their existing workers' visas. So that's leaving another pool of people who are working and who are working for good organizations, and they can't actually extend their leave to remain. And so that's exacerbating the problem. But also the people that we are recognizing who need work cannot get into employment with the good employers who have the hours, because there is still a shortage in social care, but they can't get employment because the Home Office has now started asking employers for ridiculous volumes of documents to try and establish whether they're legitimate businesses or not. And this is for established big providers who are providing thousands of hours in care to the local councils. So we're working together with our local council to try and see how we can help those businesses so that they can absorb people who need to get into employment and get switches. So we're taking an approach which is the legal side, but also on a practical level, how can we get them into employment, and how can we support legitimate businesses to be able to get the staff that they so desperately need. So in a nutshell, I think my 5 minutes is up. That is what we're doing on the ground. The volumes, the numbers are absolutely nothing we've ever seen. I think this crisis is on the scale of the Windrush. It's massive. And there'll be more that will unfold in the months to come. Thank you.
Excellent, Rumbi. Thank you very much for that. I mean, just you saying that between January and now, you've actually had over 300 people come to your drop-in section. It's quite, I was going to say, alarming. And that's just one small charity in Coventry. People coming from all over the country. I'm sure there are other charities like that who are doing similar. So the scale of the problem is very massive. And so thank you for your intervention. I'm going to come to you now, Naima from BASNET Africa, for your 5 minute intervention. Thanks, Naima.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And thank you to the other panelists. I think so much has been said. It just puts what I'm going to say in another kind of dimension. And before I go on, just to talk about what we've been doing at BASNET, I think our intervention started way back in 2021. And I think when Gary was talking, he mentioned some meetings he has been in raising these issues and being told that the care sector was at the bottom of priorities. So in 2021, I think almost December to 2022, we started having issues or seeing more issues within the seasonal with seasonal visa schemes. And we had a meeting with the then Anti-Slavery Commissioner, Sarah Thornton, to raise what we were seeing, the kind of exploitation coming to our door. And we had also seen issues within the care sector. So we raised issues, came up with recommendations to see what could be done. At the back of that, we organized a roundtable discussion. And of that roundtable discussion, we did that in partnership with the National Care Association, and again, other related agencies, to discuss what we saw as a brewing pandemic in 2022. In the room, we had the GLA, that's the Gangmaster and Labour Abuse Authority. We had some of the devolved governments, Wales, in that room as well. We had some Home Office officials and a host of other agencies to let them know the trend of abuse that we are seeing in the care sector and what needed to be done at that time. Again, we are in 2024, is way beyond us and is more of a pandemic. Nothing was done at the time. We hosted awareness symposiums to share information, I think in 2022 and 2023, to mark International Labour Day. At that time, we organized it in partnership with our members, and we called it homegrown slavery. Again, in Debbie's introduction, she talked about this kind of exploitation being perpetrated by the government. And when we say the government, in that sense, the kind of exploitation we are seeing is unlike any form of exploitation or modern slavery that we've seen over the years. In the past is where individuals are brought in from some source countries, some coming in illegally. They do not have the right to be in the country. Their documents are taken from them. In this instance, we have individuals in the country coming in through legal means, have all the documents to be in, all the right documents to work, and yet they're being exploited. So we kept raising these issues. Now to 2024. Again, we saw the issues rising. So many individuals going to our members, service users, and Tulia talks about, at least within the last 3 months, receiving 300 people coming through their doors. We have a membership of over 40. So multiply that with other members. 300 per one charity, multiply that by 40. So you can see the scale of individuals going to our members with these cases. And it has some sort of caveat. It comes with trust, because again, the number of people coming through the country on this health and social care visa scheme are predominantly Africans and Asians. And I think that's why when we wrote the letter to the Home Office, we specifically termed this as racial discrimination. Because if it were to be any kind of individual coming on any kind of visa scheme, we believe strongly something would have been done. These are individuals coming from Africa, individuals coming from Asia, who are openly invited to support the UK system because we have a gap. We have an employment gap within a particular sector. So look at it from this dimension. You openly invite a stranger, or you openly invite someone to your home. And yet when a person enters your home, you decide to treat the person badly without putting any sort of safeguarding for such an individual. Even on a personal level, you know that this is as horrible as it gets. So again, in that letter, as Debbie has said initially, it was signed by BASNET members and its friends. It covers almost 40 plus charities that believed what we talked about. And yet, I think it's almost a month ago, and we still not heard any response. So this is what we've been doing so far. And now we are having this event. Again, when you look at the theme of the event, we are specifically looking at the exploitation of migrant women. It's not because of anything that we are looking at women. It's simply because the ripple effect of exploitation of women within the healthcare sector have so much consequences within our community and within the very people that we look at. I think before Debbie called me, someone put in the chat her narrative as being a mother coming in with her children is not a narrative in isolation. So what we are seeing, especially at our parent organization, Afruka, we've seen high number of migrant mothers whose children are being taken into the care sector, foster care. And it's simply because, one, they're not having the job to take care of their children. They're taking on more work so that they will be able to cater for their children. They do not have the right information to be able to safeguard their children. They are either leaving their children home alone. They are doing things that are not within the parameters of, or the frameworks or the legal frameworks of the UK. And they end up having social workers visiting them and their children being taken away from them. So that is a whole case study that we need to look at. It's a whole conversation that we can have on another day. And I think in the initial conversation that we had, the initial clip that we showed, I think Jane talked about some of the women going into prostitution. I don't know if anyone picked up on it, but then it's as horrible as it gets. That if somebody is within this country not finding, even though the person has the legal rights to be here, and the person has the right to be able to earn money and is not earning, they look at any other source to be able to take care of themselves. And what we are seeing is high rate of prostitution of individuals going into clubs, casinos to be able to target rich people just to be able to get by. And again, it's simply because of the negligence of the government. The policy that we are seeing, when we review it, has so many gaps. I don't know if my 5 minutes is up, but Debbie, if you can give me 2 minutes, I'm just going to talk about the myths and some facts that are being used to hold some of these individuals into ransom. And before I go on, I need to make a disclaimer, and that is this guidance, whatever I'm going to share here, based on the review that we've done with the health and social care sector, and again, with the no recourse to public fund, is just a guidance. It does not constitute any legal advice. And I'm very happy that on this panel, we have 2 lawyers here. So please, Jamila, Rombi, please protect me if I'm going beyond any law. I'm not a lawyer. I raise my hands for that. So it's just intended to serve as a form of information to equip the individuals, the narrative that we're hearing here. So the Health and Care Visa Scheme, VISA, allows medical professionals to come to or...
Sorry, Naima, sorry to cut you short. I'm just thinking this bit that you're going into now. Can we not leave it until later when we talk about the recommendations? I think that will be more appropriate for that. So thank you so much for your intervention. And before we move on, of course, we screened this video that was put together by one of our friends at Africa called Mark Shepherd. And Mark, I don't want to tell your story. I really want to invite you, if you don't mind, please, to maybe spend about 5 minutes or so to talk about why you did the video. If you're here, Mark, I'll see the floor to you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for having me here. Sorry, I'm trying to do 20 million and one things in the background as well as participate. Okay, so my name is Mark Shepherd. I am a blogger and advocate. I'm ex-Metropolitan Police. I was a trainee detective for about 6 years, and I left the Met in 2015. Okay, so how this all came about for myself. My mum suffers with dementia, and we have carers coming in from various care agencies to assist my mum with her care. In this particular situation, which led me to do this interview and this video, is because when because I've changed care companies quite a bit as well, which is something to make everyone aware of. There is a real problem with these care agencies and the staff that they provide to do home care. So on this particular occasion, the carers were very, shall I say, withdrawn. They weren't very forthcoming and outgoing as previous carers. So for that, I actually decided to start building up a rapport with them, finding out how they're doing, see how their mental health is, because people don't talk about mental health, especially within our community. We don't really talk about mental health much either. So I was just seeing how they generally are feeling about themselves. Some of them wouldn't really talk to me. They wouldn't really address anything. But others were more open, more forthcoming with the information that they were giving me. Anyway, I built this rapport with one of the ladies, which is Jane, which is a pseudonym name. It's not her real name. And I asked her about her conditions and work conditions and home life and stuff. she went into real in-depth information about her circumstances. And I thought, well, wow, that's actually coming into my home. Whereas before I was quite ignorant to it. I would hear it when I was in the police, I would hear it, you know, in investigations and stuff like that. But it's completely different when it comes to your home. When it's in your face, it's something that just hits you like a ton of bricks, and I just could not ignore it. So that's when I decided to start writing blogs, getting more involved in the modern slavery and human trafficking side of things. So I managed to, it took me a long time, don't get me wrong, to get Jane to do that interview. It took me a while because she was very apprehensive about the consequences if she spoke to me and the care company that she worked for found out. One, she would lose the visa and she would get kicked out. She's actually living in the home of the actual owner of the care agency. She's living in one of their properties. So obviously any repercussions would mean she would lose her home, so she'd be homeless. She would have no job, and it would put her in a very vulnerable state. And this is another thing why I just don't understand the whole system, how it works, because it's like a pandemic. It's so many people are being exploited, and then it comes into our homes and we don't even know it's coming into our homes. These people are caring for our loved ones and going through hell. How can they concentrate and do the best care possible when they're going through so much themselves? So this is why we need to do more. There needs to be more policy changes. But again, I don't think the actual government cares, personally. I genuinely don't think the government cares, because there's skill gaps which the government feels that if they bring in cheap labor, it will fill those gaps and everyone's happy. Not thinking about the actual migrant workers that have to come in and endure the pain of working in these conditions. So there's no empathy, you know, no real repercussions for a lot of these people that are bringing in the migrant. Because she told me there's people that actually go out to certain parts of Africa and recruit the migrant workers from poor villages and then bring them over. A lot of them don't speak English properly, so they can't communicate. They don't know how the laws work within the UK in terms of employment. And they're literally going to poor parts of Africa and exploiting them, bringing them over, putting them into 70, 80-hour weeks and expecting them to live a normal life with no days off, poor pay, debt bondage. Some of them have entered into prostitution. You know, the list goes on. So that is why, and I'm going to continue making my interviews and videos to raise awareness, because this is something that needs to be dealt with, and quite quickly, unfortunately. There you go. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark. The point you made is very poignant, because for those of us who work in the sector, we see this as a problem within the modern slavery sector, but actually the repercussions are way beyond that. A lot of these people, in fact, all these people that are being brought in are actually going into people's homes, very vulnerable people. They have to look after very vulnerable individuals. They might not speak English. They haven't been trained, as Jane said. You know, the repercussions are very extremely significant. I just find it, I don't know what to use. I just find it unbelievable that the government doesn't see a problem here. I don't understand it, because any of our parents could be vulnerable. So I'm going to come to you, Joy. You have a question, Joy?
Hi, Debbie. Not really a question. I'm just going to say a bit of what I would like to contribute.
Yes, please.
Thank you to all the panelists. You've spoken so much, and I'm really, really touched. And I'm also happy there's a community to share your own perspective. So I came in as a worker last year as a care worker to this country. And previously in my home country, I was trained as an auxiliary nurse. So I didn't come into this profession as a novice. I did all the cannulation, all the stuff auxiliary nurses could do back in my home country. But when I came into this country, I wasn't able to get shift with my main employer. And then I registered with an agency to get shifts. Now, the first home I was sent to as an agency staff, I was discriminated against because I was a woman. Now, the guy on shift told me we should start the personal care by 6. We're closing shift by 7. I told him, look, we have 15 residents and we're just 2 carers. We can't start personal care by 6. There's not enough time. You have about 3 residents you hoist. We need to take our time and we need to do it well. He started shouting at me, oh, you know so much. Why do you act like you know it all? And then the next day, he treated me like I was crap. He never spoke to me. He never asked me to do anything. I did all the personal care and all that. And the day after that, all my shift was cancelled by this care home. The manager said I wasn't fit to work in that home. I didn't have anybody to talk to. I didn't know my rights, but I knew I was being bullied because I cried. I knew I was right, but they didn't get to hear my own part of the story. Now, the whole point I'm trying to make is that at the end of the day, when they treat migrant workers wrong, they treat us in a way that we are not fit to be treated. It's going to affect the people we care for. Imagine that guy being a care worker, treating other people like that, caring for people. How will the outcome be? That's my first point. Then I went to the next home, still as an agency staff. And in that home, there was a man who had fever, and he didn't just have fever, he was struggling to cough. I kept telling the team leader for like 4 shifts, I'm not sure this man is okay. Oh, he's fine. We'll just give him paracetamol. He's going to be okay. And that. Some weeks later, this man had COVID, and then we had a lot of staff caring for him. That means we were at risk caring for someone who had COVID, and he wasn't taken to the hospital. He wasn't properly cared for. And the last one that really pricked my heart was a man who had loose bowels. I'm sorry, it might not really sound right, but we kept complaining it's not just okay to be giving him anti-diarrhea medications. We need to get him checked by a doctor. And the team leader kept saying, oh, he's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. Now do as you're told. 3 weeks later, this man was diagnosed with bowel cancer and he died because we were not listened to. In the long run, if migrant workers are not listened to, are not treated well, are not paid well, it's going to affect the people we were supposedly paid to come and care for. Not every migrant care worker is a novice. I studied engineering, materials and metallurgical engineering to be precise. But when I had my first baby, I watched the nurses care for her because she had sepsis. She was born at 28 weeks. She had sepsis. She had grade 3/5 systolic murmur. She had severe jaundice. She had radiotherapy for about 7 days. She was really, really ill. Now I watched the nurses save her. That's how I wanted to be a nurse. That's how I trained to be an auxiliary nurse, and I wanted to be a registered nurse here. Not all migrant workers are novices. Some people actually know what they do. Some people have a gut and a feeling. And if the government doesn't give that chance, that room for people to speak up or people to be treated fairly in the long run, the people we are caring for will suffer the consequences. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Joy. That is a brilliant contribution from you, Joy, Engineer Joy, shall I say? And the points you raised are very important. So essentially what you're saying is that, yes, of course, we do have people who have been brought to the UK who might not be qualified, they might not speak English, and they haven't been trained. But you're also saying that we shouldn't forget that there are people who are actually well qualified. I also heard that there are actually some people who are qualified nurses, and they would rather come in as healthcare workers because the qualification to come as a health worker is much lower than as a qualified nurse. So you're absolutely right there, but they're not listened to, and people are dying or people are being hurt, are being harmed because people are actually ignoring them. And you think this is down to racist behavior. So there's so many issues. There are lots and lots of nuances here that we will explore. So thank you for that. Right. So the does anybody have any questions, any other questions at this stage? I'm going to read out some of the comments in the chat box. Some of them are very important. Somebody said, I think Will said, I've heard there's some people who have been scammed by people who promised them COS, i.e. A certificate of sponsorship. And these scammers are in the UK here, and they will be using UK bank accounts. And your question is there any way the police or banks can get these people's monies back, right? People who are using UK bank accounts to scam people after promising them certificates of sponsorships. Is there any way that, you know, the police can help them to get their money back? So Sean, please, from Greater Manchester Authority. Sean?
Hey Debbie, I wasn't actually putting my hand up in relation to that specific question. Apologies for that.
Okay, that's fine.
I was going to add something to that. I've had a couple of cases where the police were contacted, but then there was a dispute about what that money was for. So in one case, the care home was saying, oh yeah, but that was an administration fee, and we provided a laptop and we provided X, Y, and Z. So the police said, oh, we think this is a civil matter. So I think that was in that particular, there'll be instances where I think it's more blatant and maybe the police can do something, but otherwise really it's a claim against that care home provider. So again, I'm looking at cases where we're saying, look, this individual was deceived as to the terms of this employment and has paid this sum of money, and it's not clear what this money's for. It's in breach of the obligation not to charge recruitment fees and so on. So we're just waiting to see how some of those cases may play out. But again, it all comes down to, you know, even the point that we're making about this being discriminatory, actually, you know, this wouldn't happen to British workers because they wouldn't have the visa to threaten them with. So I, in the past, have tried to bring a claims, you know, for overseas domestic workers where we were saying, look, this is race discrimination because the reason you're mistreating this person is because of the fact that they're on this visa, which ties them to this employment and to this sector. And that worked for many years until it got appealed and we ended up in the Supreme Court. So I'm still looking at ways to try and formulate that argument. So there will be cases of direct discrimination. So if, you know, overtly discriminatory comments are being made, or, you know, women are being sexually assaulted, all of those kinds of things, they will found a criminal offence, but they are a civil complaint that you could bring in the Employment Tribunal or the High Court. Again, the issue is finding a lawyer who can do that for you. But the other thing I wanted to mention is, although there's legal aid available for these issues. So if you think that there are indications of trafficking, then they will be entitled to access legal aid. And similarly, if the complaint is one of discrimination, so they're being treated less favorably because of their race, sex, nationality, gender, any of those protected characteristics, then there is legal aid available. But as I say, the difficulty will then be finding the lawyer. But
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thanks. We need to do some more work on this so we can have a pool of people who really can help. I mean, on this call today, we've already had two, I don't want to use the word victims, but two people who have been affected by all of this. I didn't even know they were coming. So, you know, just on this call alone. So I'm sure there are many more people out there who require help. So Sean, do you want to say something? Sean, you have your hand up.
Thanks very much, Debbie, and thanks very much for hosting this event today. It's been really powerful, and thank you to those who have shared their own personal experiences. It really helps to hear the reality of what's happening. And I just wanted to share, I'm not sure if this is helpful or not, but we've been working in so I work for an organisation called Greater Manchester Combined Authority, based obviously in Greater Manchester. We've been working in with partners for a number of months in this area, and I wanted to thank actually BASNET for originally putting on a roundtable in June 2022 in partnership with Gangmasters Labour Abuse Authority around this issue, which first for me personally brought this issue to my attention and enabled me to start bringing it to the attention of partners in Greater Manchester. And I just wanted to flag up for those of you who are potentially trying to maybe connect in with some of the local, I think in the ICBs, the Integrated Care Boards have been mentioned in the chat. We have been connecting in with ours in Greater Manchester, and have put together, I'll put it in the chat, the link in the chat, put together a bit of a guide, if you like, to try and send out to those who are working in things like commissioning in the care sector, who might be working in care homes, because a lot of people were seeing things but didn't know what it was that they were seeing. So we just tried to put some information together around where to report, that it was kind of consistent and the same, that we could circulate around. So if people, I'll put that link in the chat, people can access that if it's of use to them. And I've been connecting with Naima recently around trying to get information out to people working in the sector who are affected by this, and providers who are being approached by individuals to ask for those 20 hours work because they're not being provided work by their sponsor organizations. It is a mess. I'm not going to pretend it isn't a mess. And just to kind of reiterate, one of the things that we've found really challenging in terms of trying to raise awareness and trying to get messaging out to those affected, that you shouldn't be afraid in terms of your immigration status, because this is not something that people are going to be chasing you about. You will not be deported as a result of your employer not providing you with work. But one of the challenges we found that has been flagged up again is the ability to support those individuals to access safe sponsorship where they are not going to be treated in this way. And that's something that we're kind of really trying to focus on in Greater Manchester. So we're hoping to do some mapping work. Well, we've started doing some mapping work in terms of providers and those sponsor providers, sponsor organizations, to try and do something to enable us to connect those workers affected in this way with other employers who are operating in Greater Manchester, try and help some of those safe transfers. So it's just to kind of say thank you so much for this event, and we really want to be able to share kind of some of the information and work that we're doing in GM if it's helpful to others. So please feel free to get in touch. I think if we can connect in more with other regions and other areas that are seeing this, then it can only hopefully help to improve the lives of those that are affected. But that was it. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thanks, Sean. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I mean, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but do we have colleagues here from the Home Office who might want to say a few words at this point? Home Office colleagues, you willing to say something here?
Hi, Debbie.
Not. Hi.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi. Oh, hi. Hello, Yemisi. How are you doing?
Okay. Fine, thank you. Thank you. I just felt because I'm wearing two hats, and I've got my colleague Janet Griffiths, who happens to be vulnerability and forgot about my camera. It's playing up, so forgot about my camera. So I will call Janet to say a few things, but before that, I just need to say that, like I said, wearing two hats. One of the things that, and I've heard a lot of people talking about, the government is aware. Let me give you a very good example. And a lot of people do not, should I say, understand the processes and how things work. Now, my previous role was National Engagement Lead for Africa in Immigration Enforcement. So I do see a lot of things and hear a lot of things. There was a time we had an issue. Are you struggling to hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Let me increase the volume. Can you hear me now?
It's still the same, but I think yeah, we'll manage. It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
So what we need to understand, and please do not think that I'm defending the Home Office, but I just need to put something out there, and that is that in situations like this, we also need to be accountable. And when I say accountable reporting, like I said, in my previous role, I see a lot of things. And when this issue around COS and exploitation started emerging, and when I speak to people that, please, I don't need your name, I just need the details of what you have gone through, because we work with stats. oh, I think the very first one, the individual said, oh, will you be able to get my money back from me? And I said, it doesn't work like that. It's not about getting the money, but it's about addressing this so that other people do not become victims. About 10 people in a group that were affected. I never heard anything after that. So I have so many instances like that where our people, for some reason, and somebody mentioned something which is key, a lot of people are told that if you speak out, you'll be arrested, detained, and removed. In campaigning going around the country, we've been saying this over and over, even before COS. Please, 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 if you are a victim of crime, exploitation, whatever it is, even if you have overstayed, right? We have the responsibility to actually look at that issue, that crime that has been committed against you. Because you're here illegally does not mean you do not have a right to justice or to be heard. But I don't know what else to do, and I'm sure, unfortunately, my other colleagues from the community engagement team could not join. But can I please plead, and I'm glad that this is on Facebook, that there are so many organizations that people can reach out to act if they're not confident enough to speak to Home Office, like myself, because my face is out there. But please, we need this information to be able to gather stats. And without stats, it is hard to deal with. It might just be the one of, when a lady came online and was scamming people with British Commonwealth card, the only reason we were able to deal with it was when I started getting calls from solicitors. The calls from the solicitors was the evidence that I presented to my colleagues, and we worked with the Metropolitan Police, eventually arrested the lady, and she even made 10 most wanted in the UK. So I cannot plead enough in terms of reporting and gathering stats, which the government or whatever agency needs to deal or address the situation. Two, we are currently in talks. When I say we, ABLE, this is the Association of British Nigerian Law Enforcement Officers, we are currently in talks with GLAE because this has come to their attention. It's not as if they're not aware, but when it comes to identifying and going about dealing or address this, they need organizations here, all the organizations that are part of BASNET, to work with them. So like I said, we're in conversation with them. We had one online, we're going to have another one. Debbie, I'll have a chat with Anima, I'll have a chat with you after, because they need to engage with the grassroots organizations to get more information about what is going on. Yes, they have an idea, but not the in-depth idea of what is going on, how to deal with it, and how to also raise awareness and educate our people across African continents and Asia continents to ensure that they do their own due diligence, they get all the information, they do their checks also. So I'll stop at that. Somebody says, sorry, I can't hear the current speaker properly. I don't know what is wrong with my audio. I'll try and sort that out.
Okay, I'll try and summarize what you said. Thank you, Yemisi. Sorry if you couldn't hear her properly.
If Janet is there, because she's the safeguarding and modern day slavery lead in immigration enforcement, it would be nice for her to say something. Janet, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Debbie, do you want to just sum up what for the rest of the group what Yemisi was saying, and then I'll just add a little bit to it.
I guess what Yemisi, let me, hopefully I got this right, but the summary of what you said is really that there's no compulsion on anybody to leave the UK if they've had a problem with their employer. If they're able to get to the right authorities and make a report, the reports will be looked into. But one of the things that you found is that people are not really willing to come forward because of possibly fear of being, deported. So essentially what you're saying is that we need to do more to reach out to people, even before they come here, so they understand what the issues are, what the risks are, and they can take the appropriate steps to protect themselves from unscrupulous employers. That is what I understand what you're saying to be, right? Am I right? I hope I'm right. So Janet, you have the floor. Just 5 minutes, please.
Thank you.
At most.
Oh, well, I'll be really quick. So my name is Janet Griffiths. I'm a safeguarding and modern slavery lead, and I happen to work in immigration enforcement. So one of the things I just wanted to say is the government are aware of the issues going on, but one thing that you have to understand is that unless we get told, the government get told about unscrupulous sponsors and employers, they don't know that there's an issue with the employers. So unless people come forward, and I appreciate all the reasons why they might not want to, but unless we're told about it, we can't deal with the issue. We can't look to seeking solutions. Now, there is some work going on at the moment about trying to deal with the bogus, unscrupulous, organised crime-related sponsors, and there will be some changes to what's happening going forward in the next few weeks and months. Now, that isn't looking at penalising the workers. That's dealing with the fact that these bogus or unscrupulous employers, sponsors, saw a loophole and have completely and utterly exploited it to the detriment of genuine workers who have come over for the best intentions, for the best reasons, to fill a gap that we all accept is in the UK workforce for whatever reason. So it's not about penalising those workers. It's about making sure that the sponsors who are mistreating them, not giving them work, whatever it may be, are dealt with properly. So please do have a look at gov.uk when the changes are announced, and the submission is with ministers at the moment, as far as I'm aware. It will come out in due course, and hopefully then we can move on and then try and sort out the status of the workers. But please don't think from an immigration enforcement point of view that we will be going around picking up workers and deporting them. That's not what this is about. This is about making sure that people who have come here legally on genuine visa routes to do a genuine job that they thought was there are looked after going forward. There's lots of information on gov.uk. If anybody does need any help, get a hold of Debbie or Yemisi, and we'll see what we can do on a case-by-case basis. We're here to help. We're not trying to make it more difficult. But thank you, Debbie. It's been a brilliant session, and I'm really pleased that I got an invite. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Janet. So essentially, you're saying that there's a lot of information on .gov.uk, because I've seen about 2-3 comments now about, are there any resources for potential migrants to use? So is there enough information on .gov.uk, or should we be looking into devising new sources of information for people before they come in here? And also, what roles do the various embassies have before issuing visas? I mean, can you say something about this, Janet? That was Janet Griffiths, by the way, from the Home Office. Mark? Janet?
Yes, so I will put the gov.uk link in the chat in a minute, but they're also on gov.uk. There is actually a list, and I'll see if I can find the link. If not, I will send it to Debbie and she can put it there, of all the sponsors who have licenses at the moment. So if there's a worker or somebody supporting that, or a lawyer, and you're looking to try and get advise somebody to go and get another sponsorship, the list of the approved sponsors is on the gov.uk site. So what my advice would be to make sure that if you're going to approach somebody for additional work, the 20 hours, then you make sure, or even if you're going to change it from one care home to another or one care provider to another, that you make sure that you go for an approved thing. And somebody said really early on is people are deleting evidence. Please don't delete it, because whilst you may think or you may say, oh, well, that email or WhatsApp chain or whatever it may be, it shows that I paid whatever it is and I thought it was for this, this and this. If you've paid £20,000 and you thought it was for a house, a car, a laptop, a training, schools for your kids, your healthcare, whatever, and when you found here it was for none of that, that's evidence against the exploitation. So please don't delete it, because it's not about getting the workers into any trouble, prosecuting them, removing whatever. It's about making sure that the people who come here legally and legitimately are supported and protected and are not exploited.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Janet. Thank you very much, everybody. So we're going to round up now, and I'm going to come back to our panelists, and I'm going to start with you, Rumbi, to say your last few words. You have 2 minutes, be it your recommendation and whatever the way forward is. So Rumbi, your last 2 minutes, please. Your few words, your last few words.
Thank you very much, Debbie. And thank you, Janet, for that, and all the other speakers. And I believe that at this time, it's important for us to get the word out to the vulnerable migrants who are here, because the fear is very real, and people are at risk of going underground and starting to live in the UK illegally. But it's imperative for us to get the information out to them, to raise awareness, for them to know that help is available, that they haven't done anything wrong by coming to the UK at the invitation of the United Kingdom government to come and help where there's been a labour shortage. So raising awareness, ensuring that people are aware of their rights, are aware of the options that are available to them, and are able to access new, credible, and good employers. I think that's one of the things which I believe at this time is really important. We have seen in our organization 2 suicides. We have lost 2 people who felt overwhelmed by the exploitation they'd gone through, the prospect of being deported back to their country of origin, and resorted to committing suicide. So the need is great. The needs are so great across the United Kingdom, and we need to work together with the government to be able to help people in this situation. Thank you.
Excellent, Rumbi. Thank you very much. And I'm going to come to you, Emilio.
Yes, thank you. So I was just putting on my video back on. Thank you very much. I mean, there's so much to say, but I actually wanted to, I mean, I appreciate Janet coming here, Janet Griffiths from the Home Office coming here and giving their point of view. I would like to ask them a follow-up if possible. Janet says that there's no risk of reporting it for the worker, of reporting their employer to the Home Office. But I would just say 2 things. We know of workers, we know of instances where the Home Office has revoked an employer's license, and as a result, workers have had their visa curtailed. Can Janet confirm that no further workers will have their visa curtailed if the Home Office revokes an employer's license? That's the first thing. And the second thing, there's also, you will see the report from the Observer on the 5th of February, 2023, that a worker gave disclosures to the Home Office about their employer, and then the Home Office told the employer the worker's name who gave those disclosures. Can Janet confirm that this will not happen again, and so that workers can truly feel safe when reporting to the Home Office?
Oh,
Emiliano, so thank you very much for that. That's a very big ask for one little civil servant here to make promises of that. And you knew I'd say that. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't. Unfortunately, I am only a lowly civil servant, and I am only a safeguarding lead. I'm not a high-flying person who sits in Whitehall and makes decisions and policy like that. It shouldn't happen. And if it does, then they need to get in touch with me and I will deal with it, because it shouldn't be happening. That people should be able to, and that's for any crime, report any instances of modern slavery or crime with the confidence that they will be dealt with in the correct way. Now, the serving withdrawing visas or conditions, I think that's a process that they go through. It doesn't mean to say that people will be removed. It's just like if you get if you get encountered working illegally. No, I'm not talking about care workers. I'm saying if you're in a car wash, you've been found to work illegally, you get served papers, but then we then find that you're a victim of modern slavery. You will still go through the process of having the papers served, but then nothing else will happen after that until such date that you've your modern slavery claim has been looked at. So there are certain processes. That doesn't mean to say that it will automatically go to a removal or a deportation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks for that, Janet. So essentially, anyway, we'll come back to that when I summarize. So I'm going to come to you, Jamila. Your last 2 minutes, please.
Oh, 2 minutes. Yeah, I think it's difficult to sum it up in 2 minutes. There is a lot that needs to be done. I think absolutely there needs to be some kind of campaign to ensure that workers are aware of their rights. I think as a community, we can be sharing links and so on about where people can get advice and assistance, because I've talked a lot about there being actions that workers can take, but really, really being able to access that legal advice and assistance. I think we should make sure as a community that we have those networks so we know which lawyers are picking up cases and where people can get employment advice. So I think there are practical steps that we should be looking at as a community, even down to things like, I've spoken to workers previously and said, look, if you've left a rogue employer, think about where you're going to get a reference from in order to be able to go to a new employer. It's things like, for example, sharing amongst ourselves details of employers who we think are good and reputable employers, because yes, there is a list of everybody with a sponsorship license, but that includes all of the individual, all the rogue organizations as well. So again, still being able to, I think if we come across care agencies or care homes which aren't charging fees to go over to them, who aren't charging for a new certificate of sponsorship, again, if we can be sharing that information amongst ourselves. I know some of the unions were looking at being able to sign up health and care workers at a really reduced rate, and again, perhaps encouraging some of that. I mean, as a lawyer, my starting point is always, if there's a claim, I want to try and issue that claim. So absolutely, again, just keep in mind that, the workers that we're seeing are workers with rights, and where we can help them to try and enforce those rights by getting them to lawyers and getting them legal assistance. One of the things that I'm working on at the moment at ATLU is a sort of care worker toolkit with actually very practical. So the letter that you send to the employer when there's been a breach of the working time regulations, and just a little bit more detail about what can and what representations can be made to the Home Office in the interim. I would like to have finished with a sort of very clear point or solution, but unfortunately, I think this is just a work in progress, and it's really great that this event has been put together and we've had an opportunity to meet and share ideas, and I think we just need to keep on doing that.
Excellent. Thank you, Jamila. Thanks a lot. And I'm going to come to you, Naima.
Thank you so much, Debbie.
Yep.
So, couple of things here. One, for lack of information, my people perish. I think we've compiled some sort of myths and facts, and what we know at our end is that some of the agencies are holding their workers to ransom because of lack of information or understanding of the information that are available to them. And I think by the end of this event, we'll be able to polish it and have it on our website. So please visit our website and have this information as a guide for yourself. Second, we're also trying to compile a lot of narratives so that if it gets to a point that we need to sue the government, sorry, Janet, we'll be able to do so with enough evidence. My colleague have been able to share that link in a chat session. If you want to share your story confidentially, please use that form, tell us your story, and then we'll be able to build up on that. The third thing is that if there is any funder here on this call, we need to be able to find a way to help these vulnerable individuals. At the moment, we are seeing some of local authorities going bankrupt and all that. And I think it's one of the reasons why they are a little bit hesitant when it comes to helping most of these individuals. So if there's any funder on this call who would like to work with BASNET to be able to help any of these carers who are destitute or vulnerable, we are very, very open to this conversation to be able to help them at any point in time, especially women with kids, those who really need help, need legal aid, legal support. please, we are open to have this kind of conversation. And lastly, Debbie, I think Jamila talked about campaign. The campaign should not just be here. We should also be thinking about the source, where they're coming from. Is there a way that we can raise awareness in the countries where we are recruiting these individuals from so that they are more equipped, they have information enough before they come in? And is there any integrational information for them to come so that when they get into the UK, it's not just a matter of I'm coming to work. They have all the requisite information, where to go, whom to report, because as it stands now, even where to report their employers is extremely difficult. They're calling Citizens Advice Bureau and they're only signposting them. They are calling ACAS and they're only telling them things that they can't even afford. ACAS will tell them, yes, your employer is breaching their contract, you need to find a lawyer. For someone who doesn't even have any salary or the salary is being taken away from them, what money do you want the person to take to get a lawyer? So again, it's a vicious cycle. So again, it's not just here that we need to have a campaign. We need to look at the source so that we can raise enough information. And lastly, thank you everyone for being here. Back to you, Debbie.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Naima. And on that note, I'm very pleased that, we've had a very informative session today. There's a lot of, information to take forward. I'm happy that the government is thinking of a new law. I don't know the details yet, but if it's something that is going to help all these people who have been needlessly brought to the UK to suffer, I'm going to be all for it. If it's going to be helping people who unwittingly are coming to the UK, thinking they're coming to work, but they're coming here to suffer. When I say suffer, I mean financially, emotionally, if being exploited, being enslaved. If it's going to help them, I'm all for it, and we're all for it at BASNET. If it's not, if it's just about limiting immigration, that really is not the issue. The issue really is, how can we stop the exploitation and slavery of people, innocent people who think they're coming to work in the UK? So, and then of course, there's a lot to do in relation to information sharing. There's a lot to do in relation to passing on the message to people. But how do you reach people in villages who don't speak English? Villages dotted all over India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Ghana, and other countries. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do. All different arms of government should be involved in all of this, especially the people who are dishing out the visas at the high commissions all over in different countries. They have a key role to play here, to be honest with you. So there's a lot of work to do in that sense. I want to say thank you to all our panelists for their contributions and your time. I want to say thank you to Mark for your efforts. You didn't just see something happening and say, okay, fine, as long as my mom is okay, I'm fine. You actually did something about it, and it's really helped this conference. The video you put together, and a lot of people will get help as a result of it, Mark. So kudos to you. Thank you, Naima. Thank you, Emiliano. Sorry, Emiliano, I called you Emilio because I know somebody called Emilio, so I got confused there. Thank you, Emiliano. Thank you, Jamila, and thank you, Rumbi, for your contributions. And we're going to produce a report of this meeting, and we're going to circulate it as well, just so that it's there, for posterity. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.